Okay, today we're starting Prishus. That's correct. Chapter 13, Mesilas Yesharim. Bebeir Midas HaPrishus. Right? Explanation of the Midah of Prishus. So again, translating, Prishus means what? Prishus means to separate, right? Leave, right? With Prushim. However, we had, just a reminder, also we had such people in history called Prushim, the Pharisees. But the Pharisees, right? Again, the Pharisees is just doesn't mean, the word Pharisees doesn't mean anything, right? But it comes from this word Prushim, to be separated. Okay. Fine. So we have Prishus. So let's see. Let's work it out. So he tells us like this: Prishus itchilas haChasidus. Prishus is the beginning of Chasidus. Okay. V'tira, and look and see. Shekol ma shebiarnu ad ato hu ma shemitztarech el odem l'shiyeh tzadik. That everything that we've explained until now is what a person needs in order to become a tzaddik. U'mikanu loholo, and from now on, hu l'shiyeh chosid is what you need to become a chosid. Okay. So again, it goes back to our discussion. Exactly. Where does a tzaddik start? Where does a chosid begin? And in terms of can you be working on both packages simultaneously? Meaning, do you have to unpack the tzaddik package and fill it out and then go to the chosid package, or can you, while you're still working on the tzaddik package, can you also be working on the chosid package? Right? That's very important to know for us, because there are certain things. For example, right? Well, we'll see again. Let's spell it out. So Chasidus means, the word Chasidus comes from the word Chesed. Chesed means doing something that you not obligated to do, right? So if somebody says, let's say, I don't know, I see somebody, that's a good example, but I see somebody struggling with something, and I feel like I could help out. I inquire what's going on, right? I could have passed by, and again, I'm not going into the details whether you're allowed to pass by. There's a halachas about this. But let's say in a situation where you were allowed to pass by, but you chose not to pass by. You did a chesed, right? You did a chesed. You went above and beyond, right? So chasidus, by definition, means going with what's called lefnim meshuras hadin. Lefnim meshuras hadin. Lefnim meshuras hadin. Yes? Good. So the question is, we all of us have certain things that let's consider them, so to speak, things we feel strongly about, and so we go lifnim shuras hadin oftentimes in certain things. Maybe we're not allowed to do that. Who says you're allowed to do chesed, so to speak? Stick to the program first, master the program. Once you master the program, maybe you can go above and beyond the program. Maybe you're not allowed to viskaculate, Right. Again, it seems ridiculous. Why shouldn't you be allowed to viskaculate? What's the big deal? Right? What's the big deal? So I'm going above and beyond. What's the problem? So the problem is, first of all, we have something called mirzi kiyura. Certain things that we don't allow you to do because it looks like showing off. Right? So again, if it's not on your level, I don't want to use the words, dirty phrase, know your place, but sometimes you gotta know your place. On the other hand, sometimes, again, it's a very complicated question that I don't know if we're ever going to resolve, but it's because, it's a very complicated question. Very complicated question. Again, example, I just heard talk about this. This is a big shaila, right? Not so much a shaila right now, but let's say wearing a yarmulke to work. Is that a halacha, or is that a going above and beyond? Nowadays, maybe it's a halacha right now because it's commonplace. Let's say, rewind 50 years ago. Let's say I say to myself, you know what? I want to wear a yarmulke, and you lose your job. You lose your job because of it. Maybe that's not a mitzvah, maybe it wasn't a mitzvah, maybe that's an avera. On the other hand, if not for the fact that Hasidim, that's their name, if not for the Hasidim showed up, and I mention this case often, they showed up to America and they stood their ground on their streimels and their socks and their tzitzis out, we wouldn't have the kind of atmosphere that we have today, that we're allowed to wear any Jewish thing to work, whatever we want, because they stood their ground. They did. So you could say. So again, it's a very complicated question, I think. Okay, so that's number one. But let's see. So he's saying again, Aprishus is the beginning of Hasidus. Now we're basically till now. So on a Maisa level, we will never be beyond this point. We're done. We're going to be forever stuck in Nikias. I'm assuming most of us are, done with most Zrizus. Occasionally we slip up, but most of us, I think, I understand at least the concept of Zrizus. Nikias is where we live. Nikias is where we live. Okay, but let's see what Prishus. What is Prishus? So let's see. V'nimtza. So we'll come out. We'll find a Prishus ima Chasidus. That Prishus together with Chasidus, who kemoi hazihirus im hazrizus. Okay, that the relationship between Prishus and Chasidus is the same relationship as Zehirus and Zrizus. What? Shezeh besur meira. That this one is in the area of sur meira, which means remove yourself from evil. V'zeh b'asei toiv. And this one is in do good. In other words, this one is in the negatives, the other one is in the positives. Okay? So again, we're gonna, because why is he saying this? Because there's two types of Chasidus, quote unquote. There is the Chasidus that is the realm, okay? And then there's the Chasidus that is the particular Midah, which we're gonna study in chapter, wherever that is chapter 18. Right? So chapter 18 is going to be devoted to Chasidus. Chapter 18 is going to be devoted to Chasidus. But that's a particular midah of Chasidus that relates to positive commandments, right? It's Chasidus and positive commandments. There's also a general midah of Chasidus, which represents the idea of going beyond what is required. Okay? So you can go beyond what is required in negative commandments. That could be machmir on things, as we will see, right? And you could go beyond in positive commandments, like doing some extra mitzvahs or doing some extra, let's say payas, beyond doing things, whatever. But again, we'll see what it means, right? But right. So again, there's a Chasidus that is the umbrella, and there's the Chasidus that is the specific midah. So when he says that Prishus is Tchilas HaChasidus, that Prishus is the beginning of Chasidus, is referring to that Prishus is the beginning of the umbrella known as Chasidus, right? Fine. So then he says, "V'nimtza Prishus im Chasidus u'kemo hazihirus im hazrizus shezeh besur meira v'zeh be'asei toiv." Fine. So now he's going to go. So what is Prishus? V'hinei klala Prishus. So what is the general definition of Prishus? Hukamash yomer zichronim livracha. It is what our sages said, Kadesh atzmecha b'muter lach. Sanctify yourself in those things that are muter to you. Kadesh atzmecha b'muter lach. Okay? Kadesh atzmecha b'muter lach. Kadesh atzmecha b'muter lach. Sanctify yourself in the things that are muter to you. Okay? V'zoi si ha'irasa shel hamila atzma. And that is really the definition of the word itself. Prishus. Ratzuloima. What does that mean? Liyois poiresh umarchik atzma min hadavar. To separate and distance yourself from something. Again, separate and distance. Okay, just file that away. Okay. Separate and distance. V'hainu she'oiser al atzma dvar heter. What does that mean? That means you forbid upon yourself something that is actually mutter. Okay? Because it's Kadesh Atzmecha B'muter Lach. You have to sanctify yourself in something, right? Again, so just basic definition. The word Kadesh, right, means separations. Means separation. So once upon a time I saw the definition. Again, I've had questions on it, but basically that let's say, if this is, let's say, Gashmius, right? Let's say, and this is Ruchnius, let's say, right? And the person is in the middle, right? So if a person pushes away, no, how do I say it? If a person separates himself from Gashmias, that's havdalah, that's separation, right? If a person separates from Gashmius from the perspective of this thing, the Ruchnius that's above, that's Kedusha, right? So both the word means separation. Havdalah and Prisha, same thing, it means separation, right? But there's separation in terms of a positive aspect of it, that's Kedusha. When you're separating towards spiritual, that's Kedusha. When you're separating away from physical, again, which by definition also means towards physical, but that means Havdalah. I'm focusing on the separation away from something, while Kedusha is focusing on separation towards something. Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Fine. Fine. So this is you forbidden upon yourself something that's mutter. Again, forbidding because we are now in the negative commandments territory. Now, why would you forbid on something that's mutter, right? Why would you forbid something that's mutter? Again, the intention of doing that, that you should not interact or what's the word? Hit upon the Isser itself. So the reason why I'm forbidding myself is because I'm distancing myself from the Isser. Okay? V'ha'inyan. So we have, again, this is just definition of terms, right? There's the klal, right? There is the klal, there's the kavana, and there's the inyan. Okay, so v'ha'inyan shekol dover sheyuchal livolid mimenu gromas ra, that anything that you perceive that can come from it, a cause of ra, of evil, even though it's something right now that's not causing anything evil, and in itself is not really evil, this person still wants to distance and separate himself from it. Okay, so now he switches the order. Before it was Poirish Umarchik, now it's Yarchik v'Yifresh. Okay, so first there's distance, and then there is separate. Okay, v'hizboinen. Now contemplate. V'tira sheyesh kan shalosh madregos. That there exist 3 levels. Yesh ha'isurim atzmam. There are certain things that are the forbidden things themselves. V'yesh siyugoisehem. And then there's siyagim, right? What's a siyag? A fence, right? As the Turkey always told us, asu siyag l'Torah, right? Construct a fence for the Torah. So in other words, rabbis already thought for you, right? They said, hey, here's the Isser, right? The Isser is don't do work on Shabbos. Here's a siyag, don't pick up a hammer on Shabbos, okay? So the rabbis have already thought for you and created fences, right? So that's your second madrega. Veheim agzeris. So what's a siyag? What's a fence? Heim agzeris. These are the decrees v'hamishmaros and the watches. Shegozru chachamenu zechronim l'roch al kol Yisrael, that our sages decreed upon all of Yisrael. V'yesh harchekim. Now there are additional distances shemutol that are dependent upon, incumbent upon is the translation here, that are incumbent upon. I'll call porush uporush lasois on each and every individual porush to do liyos koines b'toich shelo. He needs to kind of confine himself within his own boundary. Make additional fences for himself personally. Dahainu, that is, that he needs to leave behind certain things that are mutter, that are not forbidden to other Jews, and to separate from them. And he does that in order to distance himself from evil a great distance. Okay? So far so good? Yeah. Any questions here? Anything out of the ordinary? Anything surprising? I mean, the whole idea is very surprising. I mean, we probably heard of it before, we discussed it, but the whole idea is really surprising. Why should there be, right? God said this is mutter,
Right, all of a sudden you come in
and all of a sudden you decide to be a frumi. Who said that this is what Hashem wants? Right? Again, he's going to ask this question himself, so we don't have to yet discuss it. So that's why we should probably just keep moving, and then discuss things. V'im toimer. Here it is. V'im toimer. And if you'll say minayin lon, from where do we know? Liyos meisifim v'holchim b'yisurim. How do we know that we should be adding additional isurim? Didn't our sages themselves say, is it not enough for you what the Torah answered? That you will go ahead and you create additional isurim. And whatever our sages, right? Furthermore, right? Whatever our sages in B'chachmosam and their chachma saw shetzorich lesser that they needed to prevent, right? To make things that are awesome, meaning those fences, the second layer, v'lasois mishmeres, and to create a protective layer. Kvarasuhu, they already created a protective layer. U'mashu yanichu leheter, and what they allowed, hum ipnei shiro heyoyser roy leheter, because they saw that it's mutter, it's roy leheter, v'loy leiser, and it should not be aser. Why should we now create gzeros asher loyroihem ligzeroson, which they themselves did not see fit to create? Okay, fair question. Right. Furthermore, not only that, we have an idea that there is something called a chumrah that really becomes a kula, right? If you become overly frum in some area and start forbidding things, it may lead to complications somewhere else. Right? It may also lead the whole concept. I'm frumer than thou, and again, which is a gaiva. Again, it also, right? There's a concept that you have to enjoy life. I mean, Hashem said, here I created this beautiful peach. Why aren't you eating it? Right? And you say, no, kaddish it's too much gashmis for me. It sounds ridiculous, right? So let's see. And furthermore, and there is no limit. There's no rule. There's no limit to such an idea. V'nimtzeim came, and so will come out as then ha'odam shoymim me'una. Right, a person is devoid and afflicted, v'loinena min ha'olam klal, and he's not partaking any enjoyment from the world at all. V'chachameinu zichronim levracha omru, and our sages said, that a person will have to give judgment before Hashem, al kol mashiro einov, on everything that his eyes saw, but he chose not to eat from it. Right? So you're going to have to give a din v'cheshbon if you saw something and you chose not to eat from it, even though it's completely mutter. And he was able. And this idea they connected to a pasuk, and the pasuk is whatever my eye asked, I did not prevent from them. That's a pasuk in Koheles. Okay, so that's the end of the question. That's an interesting idea. Again, that in a certain sense flies in the face of some of the yeshivish ideas that we see today, no? Because the attack on Gashmias, so to speak, in the yeshiva world of sushi, that's causing all the problems today in the world. That there's sushis. The sushi, we I don't know if you've heard this, but such a concept exists. Okay, so what do you mean? Din v'cheshbon, right? Right. So again, we can discuss it further, but again, I don't think the yeshiva people are also off base. Again, there probably is an element of a problem there somewhere, but they're not off base because their reaction is not a reaction to, let's go Taliban over here. That's not the point. The point is we live in a crazy consumerist society, right? I mean, we live in an insane world. We may have used to it, and it's getting only worse. It's not getting better, right? We live in a crazy consumer society. It's completely destructive to what what's the word? To what the stature of a human being is. So so sometimes could be Chachamim have the right to see fit based on the situation, based on the culture of society, that you have to go above and beyond. It's not the Hasidus, so to speak. You have to fight the battle. So when you see that the world is so obsessed with trying everything and getting everything, and one click on the button, you have to get everything. So at some point, you have to go a little bit crazy, so to speak, extreme in the other direction to again, where do you draw the line? Is that, I don't know, but I'm just saying that just because, but let's go back to the basic point. The basic point he is saying here is that physical enjoyment by itself, right? Physical enjoyment by itself, at least on this level, is not right. At least on this level, again, we'll see if later levels maybe but at least on this level, it's not a problem. It's the opposite. You have a chiyuv to partake of God's world. You have a chiyuv to partake of God's world. Okay, yeah. So hatshuva. Now we get to the answer. So hatshuva ki haprishus vadei tzorich umuchrach. Okay, the idea of prishus is certainly a must. Okay, meaning before he tells you what the logic is, he wants to first prove to you that it is legitimate.
No, but then he said this is the beginning of Hasidus. But now we're saying it's a mandatory step for everybody.
No, as an idea, meaning it must exist as an idea, right? It might not be for you right now, but I'm just saying. But as an idea, as the global map within Judaism, I will prove it to you that it exists. Now, once I prove it to you that it exists, I will then kind of provide the logic of why it exists and how it fits into the rest of the framework. Okay, so it's certainly necessary and it certainly has to exist. This is what the Torah says, Kedoshim Tiyu, which the Medrash translates Prushim Tiyu. Okay? So again, we're going to have to dig this one, and will require some digging right now. But hold on. Okay, so what does Kedoshim Tiyu means? It means Prushim, right? And we might be aware that there's a Machlokes Rashi and the Ramban how to translate this mitzvah of Kedoshim Tiyu. Okay, so we're going to come back to that in a second. So, but the Torah's Kahanim says Kedoshim Tiyu means Prushim Tiyu, because remember I mentioned to you right away that the word Kodesh means to separate. The word Parush means to separate. It might be different flavors of separation, but the idea of Kedusha means to separate. Okay? And again, also on a basic level, because there's a spectrum, right? There's God on one end, so to speak. There is Gashmias on the other end. And then there is a ladder that Yaakov Avinu saw in his dream, right? So that's it. Saying there's going to be a ladder. You're going to be moving either up or you're going to be moving either down, right? So by definition, Kedusha means moving away from this and towards this, right? And the falling down means moving closer to Gashmis, right? Okay, so Oidoimru. Further, so we see that there's a pasuk in the Torah that says Kedoshim Tiyu, you should be holy, right? And the definition of that pasuk is Prushim Tiyu, that you should be separated. Kol haYoshev b'tainis nikra kodesh. The Gemara says anybody who sits in tainis, right? In other words, there are people who fast all the time. So such a person that fasts all the time is called holy. It's called kodesh. Right? He's going to bring up later that the same Gemara says Kol haYoshev b'tainis nikra choyte, that anybody who sits in tainis is called a sinner, right? So we'll get back to that in a second. Also, so Kal v'chomer Nazir we learn from this from Nazir that he separates only from wine and still the Torah calls him kodesh. Okay. Oidamru. Further, additionally, they say tzaddik oichel l'soiva nafshoy, that a tzaddik only eats to satisfy his soul. And what's an example of that? Zechizkiyahu melech Yehuda omru alov sheshtei agudas shel yorek v'litra shel bosra v'mayla lefanu b'chol yom. Right, that he had every single day his table was full of wine, vegetables and meat, right? V'hoyu maligin alav. Where is it? V'Yisrael maligin alav v'omrim zeh melech. Right, this is a king. Right, meaning he would not eat the meat. Right, that's what's happening here. There's a king. Right. So meaning because he didn't partake of it, so he wasn't acting king-like. Oidomru, Rabbeinu HaKodesh, similarly they said it regarding Rabbi, Shebishas Misosoi, that at the moment of his death, Zokaf Esez Bo'oisof, he put up his 10 fingers, V'omer Golov Yodul F'necha Shlo Yinei Neisim In Oilam Hazeh Afilu Etzva Katana Shuli, that I did not enjoy, right, have hano from this world, even in my small pinky. So now, again, so we're seeing contradictions, right? Furthermore, they said before a person davens regarding divrei Torah that they should enter into his belly, into his stomach, right? First, you should daven that food and drink they should not enter. In other words, first, get rid of it, your kind of your enjoyment of food and drink before you pray for that Torah, spiritual Torah should enter you. Henkel moirim. So all of these statements, moirim, seem to point befeirush explicitly tzorich haprishus, the necessity of prishus v'achoyva and the obligation in it. Amnam al kol ponim tzrichin only taritz hamorim amorim hepachzeh. So now we have to answer up the statements that seem to point the opposite of that. Okay, so where are we standing now? We're standing that we have a contradiction in our Chazal and in our Torah. Some seem to point to enjoyment of the world and indulgence, right? And some seem to point to what's the word? To piety, right? To extra piety. Right? So now he answers. There are fundamental, differences. There are fundamental differences. Yesh prishus shenitztavinu boy. There is prishus which we were commanded. V'yesh prishus shehuzarno lov. There is precious which we are prohibited. Lebilti koshel boy, they should not stumble in it. Okay, so there's healthy precious and unhealthy precious. Healthy precious and unhealthy precious. V'hu mashu omar shlomo hamelech olav hasholom al tehi tzadik harbe. Right, with regards to this, Shlomo HaMelech said, meaning regarding the bad precious, don't be too much of a tzaddik. Right, again, what does it mean too much of a tzaddik? Meaning, don't indulge in the unhealthy kind of precious. That's dangerous, right? Don't be, even that's why he phrased it in such a way. Don't be too much of a tzaddik. How can you be too much of a tzaddik? What's wrong? Meaning it seems to be that it points to the tendency of overindulging in the frumkeit, so to speak. Right? So it's
in the
your precious,
right.
I'm saying your precious should not be a result in your overindulgence in your tzidkus. Your precious should be for the reason that he's about to tell us. Okay, very different. It's not about frumkeit and it's not about avoiding gashmis. That's not really what the precious is about. And he really told us before, but he's going to spell it out now. Unevayer ato haprishus hatoiv. So let us now explain what is the good prishus. V'noimer, we shall say, ki hinei achar she'izbayer lo neheis kol inyonei ha'olam nisyonis lodom. Now that we have explained that the entire world is a place of nisoyan for a person, right? We are in a state of nisoyan. As we've written above, and we proved it with proofs. And we also understood, right? It became clear to us, Gam Kain as well, Roiv Chulshas Ha'odam, the weakness, the natural weakness of a person, Vikirvas Daita El Harois, and his closeness, his mind leaning towards evil. Right? So now that we know that a person is located in a state in a place that is constant challenge, right? He's in challenge course. On one hand, the place where he's located is a challenge course. On the other hand, he himself is barely roy, so to speak, for these challenges. He's not really roy for these challenges, right? So let's keep going. So therefore, yizbarer behechrech. So therefore, once you understand that setup, so it's going to be clear to you certainly shekol ma sheyuchol ha'odam lehimolet min ha'inyonim ha'ela, that anything that a person can do to escape these challenges, maybe. Okay, roy sheyasu. So it's worthy that he should do it. Not escape these challenges is not a good word, but basically what he's saying is that avoid is also not a good word, but your job is to increase your chances of success, right? By whatever means necessary. So since you understand that you're constantly surrounded by gashmis, and you're constantly surrounded by challenges, and you have your weaknesses. So your job is to recognize those weaknesses, and not to put yourself in the place where you're going to be likely to fail, but put yourself in the place where you're going to likely to succeed. Right? It's a pragmatic. So prishus is like a pragmatic thing. It's not an emotional righteousness thing. That's what he's saying. Don't be. That's why I said it's not an overindulgence in your frumkeit. It's not an emotional thing. It's a pragmatic thing. I see potential for problems. I think ahead and think how to best not fall into the traps of those problems. Okay? Mm-hmm. So again, so anything you can do to escape from these things, not the challenges, but meaning the evil that hides, that lurks, so that you should be better protected from evil. Asher beregleihem, which he says it pretty clearly that way. Avoid the challenges. It's not avoid the evil. I said avoid the evil. It's really avoid the challenges. Mm-hmm. Avoid the challenges.
Don't push yourself in the situation.
Right. Which is again because we daven every day. That's a big question. Okay, we should discuss it. But we ask Hashem, Al tavienu l'dei nisayon, right? Hashem should not bring us to test. The whole point of existing is the test. What does that mean? Don't bring us to test, right? But that's what he's saying. He's saying is that our job is to avoid nisayon, right? And this let's get back. But it's one of the differences between us and, in general, that's one of the differences between us and the non-Jews. Non-Jews say, but just because it's you and your secretary alone working at night. What's the big deal? Why you can't control yourself? What's wrong with you? Like, we know. Thank you. Okay, right? So he's basically taking that idea and he's extending it on each individual level. Okay, let's see. Because there is no physical enjoyment, pleasure, which doesn't have some sort of a sin attached to its heel. Right? So again, so it's going to be a very thin line, right? So on one hand, he's telling us, enjoy the world Hashem created, right? Enjoy the world Hashem created. If you don't enjoy the world Hashem created, you're a sinner, right? On the other hand, he's saying, yeah, but just know that to every enjoyment out of the world, there is a chet, there's a string that you're pulling that's going to drag you into sin.
So what kind of enjoyment is he talking about? He's talking about
Any enjoyment, physical.
So, but by definition, anything that's physical is away from the spiritual. So
That's who said,
I'm just speaking out loud.
right? So he didn't say that yet.
Oh yeah.
He's saying no. He said just the opposite. You have to have an enjoyment. You have to enjoy the physical world. Hashem created it. How do you have the right not to enjoy it?
Right. So you enjoy it in a permissible way by I don't know, taking the spiritual approach to it. I'm eating the steak not because someone the steak and it's so bloody and juicy.
Okay, but that's
good.
See, I don't think Ramchal does not
He just doesn't go down
subscribe to this. Does not subscribe to this in a simple way because it's fake. It's fake. When people go in, this famous Rebbe story. This guy, Chassid comes to him for Shabbos. And every spoon he takes, L'Shem Kaddish, and the Rebbe goes L'Shem Ayboich, right?
Right, but I mean,
don't be fake. Don't be fake. And you'll see in a second one of the most beautiful lines. This is going to be one of the most beautiful lines for me in Ramchal. Is by Anova.
But why is it fake? It's a very difficult task
Because
to achieve.
you really, all you want to do is really enjoy the steak. All you want to do is eat meat during the 9 days. You say to yourself, you know what, how can I get meat? Let me make a seed. You're right. For certain people, let them make a seed. Their ruchnias is gashmias and their gashmias is gashmias. And okay, let them make a bracha and enjoy themselves, and it's okay for them. We're not talking about those people right now, right? We're talking about on the level of priesthood. The guy already covered the Shulchan Aruch. That guy does not, So, but it's fake. I'm enjoying the steak in order to make a bracha. That is fake.
I mean, that's an ideal madrega.
No, it's not. Who said it's an ideal madrega?
Why is it? Why? I mean, I can't say that I'm very, very far from that level, but I think there's value in it. There is sounds like a great ideal to try to achieve. I mean, looking at everything that you do through
again,
this,
we'll
this
see
lens.
something similar in Kedusha, where the Gashmias does become Ruchnis, but not because.
But right, yeah.
But
otherwise, by definition, anything that is Gashmias has something attached to its heel, right? Something negative.
What's attached to its heel?
It's as far away from Ruchnias.
Yeah, that's not what he's saying. It's not what he's saying.
Okay.
He's saying yes, there is something attached to every Gashmias heel.
Yeah,
However, it's saying there has to be what's the word? A pasuk, so to speak, that's attached to it. It says if you are if you are what's the word? If you are a glutton, right? And then you see I don't know if it's, you can't help yourself, right? You can't control. You love eating, right? And then you see food that belongs to somebody else, and then you go and eat it because you figured out a way for you to justify its correctness. But it's not really stealing. It's really on the house and whatever, and and there was a sample, and I sampled it 20 times, and so okay, So the Avera, there's an Avera here. The Avera here is Geneva, right? Or there was some milk fell into your cholent, but probably it's kosher because maybe it's not 60, but it's close to 60, but whatever, right? If you have there has to be a legitimate isser attached to the heel, not just idea. Listen, Gashmis and Ruchnis are contradictory, even though I just told you it is a ladder and you're either here or there, right? But we're not.
Oh, we're approaching from a different
We're
angle,
not
right?
there yet.
Okay.
We're not there yet. Even the Gashmius that Hashem created, it's still Hashem created it. So, who gives you the right to just, I'm too frum for your Gashmius, Hashem.
Okay.
Unless there is legitimate, there has to, and there's a legitimate.
Right. I'm just thinking.
In the end, we might arrive to the same destination, right?
Yes.
But I think the journey, the difference in the journey, I think, is important. Meaning, in the end, it's very possible he will say, again, there's machlokes in this. Let's say we're gonna see this. I don't want to jump in down.
Right.
Let's say Shabbos Seudah. Shabbos Seudah. Should you enjoy the physical part of the Shabbos Seudah, or no? It's something to make a bracha, quickly eat and go learn. Or should you simple and physical enjoyment of the Shabbos Seudah? What does God want from me? Right? There's some yeshivish people said, no, you have to pater up to Seudah. This is the expression. Pater up to Seudah. Yeah. Hashem, for some reason, did a strange thing. He makes me have Gashmias on Shabbos. I don't know why he does this. I'm a Talmud Chacham. I'm supposed to be learning in the Beis Medrash. Okay, so b'diavad, I quickly eat something and go learn. Right? Or you could say, no, I need the fanciest steak, the juiciest steak. Enjoy it, mamash, physical Gashmias. That's Hashem told me. Oinik Shabbos. Right? Again, I think we shall see that Ramchal favors the second approach. He would be totally against the first approach. The first approach would be Al Tehi Tzadik Harbe. It's not about what you think is right or what you think is wrong. It's about what Hashem, Ratzon Hashem. Ratzon Hashem. Hashem said, I want you to, the physical part of Shabbos is Avodas Hashem. Doesn't fit into your master plan. I'm sorry, I didn't consult you when I made my master plan. So
I think it's much simpler. Like a steak. Eat a steak for the sake of for ruchnias. I think when at that level, you don't care what you eat. You have food to make you don't care if it's steak or not steak. So at this point, you're not ignoring steak. You just don't care. You just eat.
Okay, well,
But
possibly. We'll see. We didn't get there yet.
You're not at that level. When you don't care what is served, then you got the level.
Okay.
It stopped being steak for you.
We didn't get
So
there.
at this point, you're not really actually ignoring him because it doesn't exist. But as long as he cares it's steak, it cannot be with you. Because you still enjoy the steak.
Right. I mean, it's more of an exercise than even if you're having a steak.
Yeah. As
Yeah,
long
Don't
as
eat
you,
for the sake of a steak.
Behold my favorite
so
line in Mesilas
then
Yesharim.
get the level.
Okay, right? He talks about anova. It says ki im lo yeh onov b'dait. If a person is not an onov in his mind, right? V'yirtze liyo is onov b'maisa, but he wants to be an onov in action.